online. I think so. Let's do the quality check, sound check. Want to make sure that everything is working properly and there are no hiccups. Blah blah blah. Hopefully the quality is fine and stable. Last week I got brand new fiber internet access installed, so should be smoother from my end. And today, this afternoon, I will be working on these two lovely miniatures. Those are the alternative versions of Steward and Winston Finnegan. Two alternative models. Oh well, I'll do my best. I'll see how far I can go. I think I'll paint most of them. Uh, I will pull it off. I think so. I think I will. I just started with the bases, just very simple, straightforward work. And one thing I needed to edit was the lovely umbrella or parasol. Is it the proper name when it's elegant, not functional? I needed to shorten it because the first thing that happened, it just snapped. So I needed to make sure that it's attached to at least two places. That way it stays stable. And those are, well, some of the nicest, really alternative models that I've seen in a while. I mean, all of them are nice, but these two are quite special. Like this guy has this strong Eastern vibe. Looks very serious and menacing. So I will be practicing two different skin tones for sure, because this one should have, and yeah, it's wearing this large fur coat. So I'm going to first of all start with the skin tone, then work on I think red elements, and then I will be adjusting things on the fly and see how far I go. Not going to rush things. If I don't finish, then I don't. Just want to make sure I enjoy it, and that the quality is stable. So far, so good, I guess. So off to a great start. So I'll be starting with Mr. Ulrich Volkov, who is an enforcer, and for a long time, I think he's been a staple in many guild crews, since he brings healing, brings some nasty surprise when he's taken down, and a decent all-around model with some really good functionalities for the team, for the crew that hires him. And he has golden watch on golden chain and some rings, which I assume also will be golden. But for now, I'll just start with base coating all the flesh, all the skin areas with Golemon flesh, and I'll take it from there. This is a nice way to quickly bring out all those nice details, the texture of the skin on the face. So quick start here. You can already see the facial expression looks mean. As for my reference, I'm using the cards. Those are the cards, Ulrich and Winona. And back to Winona. I will be switching between the two, because if I hold them both simultaneously, then the video quality drops. And besides, I'm not really going to be able to do much with two miniatures held in my hand at the same time. I would need a third hand, and that fortunately I do not have. So a bit more skin showing on her. Hey McBluff, nice for you to drop by. Thanks for showing up here. Nice to see you. Been admiring some of your recent works and still fully expect you to be part of the graphic team for the next Malifaux book, because why not? some skin showing towards the back area as well. And I'm not being super meticulous, just want to give a clear outline of all those areas where skin is visible. And she's wearing dark gloves, at least that's what I see in the artwork, so that's what I'm going to go with. And again, I wasn't even aware how good the quality of the sculpt is on her face, because she has this cheerful expression. So that's the start of the skin, and now I'm going to switch to my go-to solution for skin. I mean, it's not a really solution, it's a lot of work, but those are the 4 colors that I've been using for painting skin tones recently, all from new Vallejo game color range. And I'll be, well, giving credit where credit is due, man. That's just giving credit where credit is due. So to begin with, I'll mix the 2 darkest shades, because the dark one is a bit too dark for what I have in mind. So I'll go with these 2, mix them up on my palette. Small amount, don't need very much, because there isn't really a lot of skin showing on these 2 miniatures. Add some water and my mix is ready. So quick work. Want to make sure that the consistency is thinned down. And I can already start applying it because this one has dried nicely. And I'll just apply a couple of thin layers. 2 should be sufficient, leaving the darkest shades darker than what I have on the areas which are raised. Using a small brush, quick, firm brush strokes. Nothing really complex at this point, just the base color. And I'm not going to paint over the same surface twice, just want to make sure it's one thin layer, and it's much better to just paint it over with another thin layer rather than making sure it covers fully at the first go. And I chose this miniature on purpose because it's pretty new. It was part of the Last Word sales that I'm not sure, don't remember exactly how much you need to spend to be eligible for adding one of these miniatures to your cart for free. But these make really nice alternatives. Nice because they fit in thematically. They're just different, very much different than the original sculpts. Hey, Defective Dice, nice seeing you, and excellent overview of the fluff from Madness of Malifa. Really enjoyed watching that video. Of course, I read the book beforehand just to make sure that I experience all the new fluff. But you did give a very good overview of all highlights of key events there. Quite a few open scenarios, but clearly that's Damian is going to be a key player for the foreseeable future, and I'm really curious what he comes away with after his interaction with, well, close interaction with one of the tyrants. So that's the first layer of skin, and very shortly afterwards I will be going with next layer. For next layer I will just use pure Antea skin, piel de Antea, Atenea, from new Vallejo color range, which is quickly becoming my favorite paint range. Just bought a few new colors. Maybe some of them will be used tonight. Went to my local hobby store after work and picked up some, or actually, not after work to be precise, during the lunch break. Because I'm lucky in that my hobby store, my friendly local hobby store, is 5 minute walk from my office. And what I want to draw your attention to, guys, is how nicely this highlight gets incorporated over the base color. It's just the consistency of those paints. You just create this smooth gradient, and I'm essentially applying thin layer over most of the surface, just trying to avoid the deepest, most recessed areas. And it immediately adds nice volume, creates those smooth highlights without much effort. And yeah, those new Vallejo paints are excellent. So far, my experiences are extremely positive and I'm a big fan. So I'll be gradually replacing my old paints with new Vallejo paints because of two factors: quality and price. They're a bit cheaper than, let's say, Games Workshop or other paints, and the quality is better. So I don't see really a valid reason why I shouldn't be using them. The same will be done on the lady. I just need to be careful to get the right consistency. And it's just highlights itself. And again, not being super meticulous at this stage, just essentially covering 90% of the surface which was base coated with dark skin tone. And then I will do a follow-up highlight, and that will gradually build up the transition. And the advantage of working on two miniatures simultaneously is that once, well, I need to allow some time to dry. So while it dries, I just switch to the first miniature and continue highlights. And this time, painting over 80% instead of 90%. And as you know, if you've watched any of my video streams before, painting the skin is typically the most time consuming part of the whole process. Because this is the face, is the first thing that people look at when they want to really see the quality of paint job. And if I accidentally let some of the bright shade go in between the fingers, then it's not a problem because I can always use darker color to reinforce the shaded area there. And now I'm trying again to be painting over about 80% of the surface, not the whole thing. And this allows me to just gradually build this transition from dark shade to bright skin tone. And a good piece of advice I once read or heard somewhere, can't really pinpoint the exact source now, but it resonated strongly with me because I've struggled with painting skin for a very long time, is that when you paint skin, you should essentially think about it as if you were painting clothes, as if you were painting just an item of clothing, and that you use the same skill set. It's just different surface, but the same techniques apply. And once you somehow go over it in your head, then you just start treating skin as other elements of the miniature, not as something that's different, more challenging, more demanding. It's just part of the process. Now I'm painting like 70% of the area, still using the same color, but it's thinned down. So that means that when it's thinned down, while it dries and settles in, the transition will be just a bit smoother than if I just applied one layer and then switch to a brighter shade. And of course, this lovely lady will need some nice makeup to match this elegant dress. I think that the next color I will be working on will be red, both on the umbrella and on the jacket. Ulrich. Right, now I'm ready to mix using the same color, the mid-tone, let's call it mid-tone. I will be mixing it with brighter shade. So those are the two shades together. As you can see there isn't really a huge difference between them. This one is significantly brighter, but it's not like huge change. But in order to make the change, the transition smooth as possible, I'm mixing the two together and using a thin down color as transition. And starting with fingers because it's just safer to go there. Because it's a smaller area, I need to thin it down and I can look at how it interacts with darker layer and adjust things on the fly if needed. There is some noticeable contrast between dark and brighter shade, but it becomes less noticeable as the paint dries. And now starting with the most protruding elements, so the big nose. And again, thinning it down. And now moving quickly with firm, confident brush strokes over most of the area because that will work towards transitioning from this darker shade to brighter. Back to the lady. As you can see, I'm just quickly hopping from one to another. And I'm trying to be more selective here. Because last highlight was about 70%. So now let's say that I'm trying to really paint over 60% of the area. That's not the exact number, but that should roughly give you an idea of my approach here of how I distribute the highlights over surfaces such as skin or clothes. Back to the guy. And I'm just trying to blend it in. So using just a damp brush, kind of clearing the edges of the layer that I applied on top of his head. And that allows it to just smoothly transition from one highlight to another. Hello chat. Hello Spill Paintbot. Oh, some new things in the chat. Oh yeah, thanks for the comment. Glad you happy to see it. And indeed, Hobby Assistant is our best ally here against all Waldos or and nasty internet trolls and other things that happen. And she's been just superstar, going out of her way to make sure that all the weird painters can just focus on painting and interacting with this lovely community. So as a thank you, as a small thank you gesture, I did paint a one happy little miniature for our Kimberly. I mean, say our because she's just such a big part of this community that, yeah, our is probably the right word to use. Still looks like some nice tan, but that will gradually get brighter and brighter with successive highlights. Ah, come on, you've been here for more than, well, for a while, quite a while it word, but with those weird streams, it's been more than a year, and you've been steadily supporting us on weekly basis, and it is appreciated. Maybe I'll try to slightly adjust the source of light, just move it closer so that it's directly above the miniature, just to make sure that the quality is good. See, it's just one big caring and loving community, but it's a fact that people just bring out so much good stuff that you get to recognize the positive impact that a lot of people have on this community and hobby. I just can't wait till the returned keyword is available. Looking forward to putting it on the table. A bit more highlights now. Just a bright skin tone. We'll thin it down very slightly. And keep on highlighting. Now going to this brightest range of colors that I have. And I'm really, really curious to see what's next in terms of lore. Because so many things are up in the air. Was surprised that Ramos, well, didn't make an appearance, but his name was mentioned and he's still an active player. It's not like Nikonem, not really coming back unless the big resurrection is gets resurrected somehow. And you cannot say that such scenario is utterly impossible because pretty much anything goes in the world of Malifaux. Now moving gradually towards this brightest shade. See, it's already half an hour. Time flies by. And odd thing, those are actually the first Malifaux miniatures that I'm painting in the month of February, and we're already almost halfway through. But I've been just focusing on some other projects. Also, work has been pretty busy. At my workplace, it's the review period, so I write a lot of reviews and just stay busy. And there isn't that much hobby time, but it's just a couple of weeks, and then it's back to more or less normal rhythm of work. Now we're almost ready with the skin because I'm getting towards this brightest ranges of skin tone. Yeah, credit goes to the writers, but it's it's seems like putting a video together with summary of all that happens in the new book is easy, but even if you enjoy it and if it's easy for you, it's still time consuming. So a lot of work goes into it. And the new, I would say that, the Bayou players might be slightly disappointed that there isn't really much about the new master. It's more of a fun story. And there is plenty for room for more, definitely. Yeah, I'm almost happy with what I see because if I'll try to move it closer to the camera. You see that there is this transition, that this part is considerably darker in the area towards the top of the head. It gets gradually brighter. So that's what I want to see. I want to see smooth transition. And if I don't paint both of them, then at least I intend to finish the alternative steward. Now I'll mix the brightest shade. Sorry for the noise in advance. Using the vortex shaker to make sure that the paint, the mixing medium in the bottle mixes well with the pigment. And I'm ready for the ultimate or penultimate highlight. Depends on how it is absorbed. Always a good idea to test on the fingers. Because some more contrastive highlights there are perfectly fine. As even if you look at your own fingers, then the joints are distinctly more clearly visible. Painting eyes on this guy would be a bit tricky because his eyes are barely visible. He has this menacing frown on his face, so it will be a challenge that I'm happy to embrace, and will do so in a second. So as you can see now, this transition is imperfect. So what I'll do, I'll just dampen the brush, kind of paint without painting around the area that I just covered with brighter shade. Just literally spreading it out and dragging the edge of the highlight and thus making sure that the transition is smooth. Gremlins are not allowed to be plot relevant. Maybe they're just, biding their time and waiting for the right moment to really come and shine. You never know. It's like Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, right? That the smallest creature can have the most impact. Maybe that's the Gremlin story that they go to their equivalent of Mount Doom in the world of Malifaux and become the key part of fight against tyrants. You never know with word. And Zoraida, she knows everything, right? She knows all the possible outcomes. And back in one of the older books, she stated that gremlins are at the heart of things to come, great center of things to come. So I reckon we can expect them to play a major part in whatever is going to happen. just a few more highlights on the face, and then it's time for the red. But before that, I'll just do the eyes. So as you can see, the key here is to just be patient, apply several highlights, and create smooth transition. Guess now it's time for the eyes. Before I do that, I'll just prepare the surface for the eyes, and I will just use a slightly darker shade, maybe hardened leather, just a deep saturated brown for the shades around the eyes. Making sure that my workspace doesn't become cluttered, because once it becomes cluttered, I find it really hard to work. I just need things neatly organized. So before I even get to painting the eyes, what I'll do is I'll just fill in the eye sockets with darker shade. That will just allow me to, in a way, plan painting the eyes. And the eyes on both of these miniatures are absolutely tiny. And I would say that if you don't feel confident painting the eyes, then just stop at this point. Fill in the eye sockets with darker shade and leave them be. The miniatures look good enough, just like that. And if you really want to continue, then just be prepared to fix small mistakes quickly if they happen. Maybe a touch or more of highlight. And time for the white. That's the tricky part. So you need a good brush with good tip. I probably have some that will work. Maybe not this one. One of these. No, those are the large ones. It's like a sniper preparing to fire an important shot. Okay, this should do. There is the left eye and the right eye. And now the mean guy. Well, maybe he's got a heart of gold, but he certainly looks mean. Sorry, I'm just not able to say a lot when I'm very focused on those fine details. Just gentle brushes. You don't want to move the paint around too much. Try to ensure that both eyes are the same size, at least. And then comes the tricky part, the eyes, the pupils. So again, the same brush, making sure I get the fine tip, having a damp brush, and be ready to fix any mistakes that might happen. Because let's face it, they can happen. Wow, this is a really, really small surface that I'm trying to get covered here. Okay, one eye and the other. Same of on Mr. Ulrich. Trying to get them not exactly in the middle, closer towards the center, just to maintain this mean expression. There we go. I'll just try to zoom in on that guy. Not sure how much it's visible, but I'm quite happy with eyes at this point. Now it's time for the beard. And the beard will be gray. So I'm going to use gray color from the speed paint range. And I think the right one will be Graveyard Gray. I will thin it down slightly and apply it directly on his beard. Beard white, he looks Santa-esque. Well, that would be a funny look for him, but I'm going to paint his beard more gray because the cloth will be, the fur coat will be like warmer color. So I'm just applying on purpose a bit too much, just to kind of spread it around once I have it. Remove the excess from the recessed areas and just try to keep it evenly distributed. Painting around the head. I'll add some highlights with just brush strokes, no dry brushing, I think. And with the lady, it will be black, so green black. Yeah, Sample Sonia and the Witch Hunter department. That would be a nasty Santa surprise. And we know now will get darker, so I'm just base coating it with black express paint. And the same on the rod on the umbrella. I'll just go ahead already and put black on it. It gets a bit tricky with this one because I shortened the rod on the umbrella just to make sure that it can be glued in two places, to the arm and to the other arm, because otherwise it just can snap easily, and I don't want the gaming miniature to be assembled in a way that makes it risky to use it in transport or just on board. Just painting the rod. It will be either golden or silver afterwards. The gloves I think will be dark or greenish. I'll see. Well, I'm not sure yet. She also has a nice necklace. I think now would be a good time to just work on the outline of the necklace so that I can paint it in white or silver afterwards. That's the darker. And there is already some kind of final effect on this part beginning to shape out. And now for the fur, for the large furry part of his cloak, I will just use skeleton horde to just give it some definition. And there is a lot of it. So while it dries, I will just switch to working on other elements. For now, I just want to make sure that it's applied on the whole surface of the fur before I start working on the red part. And then I will further tweak it with addition of darker shades. But for now, I just want to make sure that this element is at least fully base coated, because that just kind of gives me good sense of how I can plan painting other elements, how bright or how dark I want them to be. It's just all about overall composition. That looks fast and simple, and that part actually was, because it was just about putting a base coat here. And now when I work on highlights, I will first reinforce the shaded area, and then I will work on bringing out the highlights, focusing on each part that's slightly raised. And no need to hurry, but just looking at the clock where we are. And now I'll do something funny. I will just add a quick wash of purple on the skin, but I will thin it down a lot. So I'm just putting a tiny drop on my palette, and I'm going to add much more water so that it's like dirty purple water. I'm just going to apply it. It's not a wash, it's just a thin glaze. So essentially it works like a filter where it brings the whole thing together nicely and adds extra depth, because once it dries it will just make it look more uniform. It kind of enhances the saturation of the color. It's not impactful, so you can go ahead and do a few of those glazes just to gradually affect the area, not at one go. But when you do a few glazes, you need to make sure that one dries before you apply another. I think I'll now repeat the leather straps, and for that I'll use Gorogranta fur. So there are some like belts here, and I think yes, it's a pistol, maybe a peacebringer. Not sure what his weapon is. Let me check on the card. Well, sharp wit. He doesn't really use a gun in game, so it's more for maybe something that goes with his function and that he wants to show proudly. Symbol of authority. That was a fun strategy in previous gaining grounds. Just having a quick look at the artwork to make sure I paint up all the leather belts where they should be. And this one here as well, because this part is a gun. So that will be silver. All right. And in a moment I will move to painting red. But for painting red, I actually start with blue. And the reason is that I want to put dark blue, so I'll go with Omega Blue from Express Color Range. I want to put dark blue in the most recessed areas. Then I will put dark red over it and gradually brighter red. And that way I will ensure that the most recessed areas stay much darker. Doing some detailed work here, just making sure that the recessed areas are marked in blue. Sounds counterintuitive, but it will start making sense once I have applied dark red over that. Of course, allowing it time to dry first. This is something I picked up while I think reading an article in Old White Dwarf about painting the Spain's Marine, and he had this nice dark cloak. And that's how it was explained there, and I've been using it a lot since then. Now for the pants, actually I might go with blue, but I will paint it differently. Now the umbrella. That's a tricky part because after my slight modification, it's become really hard to access all of it with a brush. And my modification was that I kept the rod a bit shorter and made sure that it's connected to miniature in at least 2 places. And yes, it makes painting it a bit more challenging, but at the same time, it ensures a much stronger connection, and the miniature just should stay intact as a gaming piece for longer. Oh, come on. Thanks for this comment. Glad you find some of the tips useful. You know, you can always find me. Instagram, Word forums, Discord. Just shoot me a message. What was your tip about painting red? And happy to quickly reply to you and remind the whole thing. And you know, I've been playing quite a bit in recent weeks. Actually, I took part in a tournament like 2 weeks ago, playing Malifaux League, and I've played 3 games, playing my 4th and I guess final game this Thursday. And the Malifaux community has been quite active in my area. I'm fortunate because a lot of people. Oh, thank you for dropping my Instagram account. If you may also add a link to the latest video by our friend Effective Dice and an excellent overview. Sorry, I should have provided it earlier ahead of time. But if you could link it up, that would be amazing because it's an excellent overview. But be mindful of some of the spoilers. I mean, all the spoilers, because the whole story is summarized there, but the book has been out for long enough that those who wanted to read the stories have already had a chance to read them. That's it. Thank you. Well worth your time. And now dark red. So for dark red, I will use Blood Angels red. Try to keep it clean, so putting back already those paints that I'm not using. But before I actually move to dark red, I will go with aromatic blue on the pants, because they will be like jeans. So I'll start with very bright blue and then gradually move towards darker. All spoilers, yep. I think there are some really interesting twists. And come on, what kind of leader Nekima is? Driven by vengeance and desire for power more than anything, it seems. She's just willing to sacrifice so much without even, blinking an eye and reconsidering if it brings her closer to gaining a powerful ally. Not the role model leadership, if you ask me. I think that the Pentanda character, what's her name? From the Library of All Things. She seems, at least, to be the most innocent one. at this point in the story, where she just comes to terms with her talents and how. But she's super loyal to Misaki, of course. So now I'm applying this dark red in the recessed areas. Over the blue. Linley, yes, that's the one. She just seems like this nice, friendly, innocent lady. Just does what's told to her by the Oyabun Misaki. But I think it's about how this library of all things reacts to her that really makes her a useful ally for Misaki. And those miniatures are some of the most amazing designs. Can't wait to see the miniatures. And the same will be done in the umbrella. So again, just using the dark red in the recessed areas. And the slightly brighter red will be used on the remaining area. And we're 1 hour in, and I'm quite okay with the progress made so far. I'm still on track to completing these two. But not going to rush it, that's for sure. And also here as well should be darker, I think. Kind of mapping where the darkest areas will be, so working from darkest to brightest. And I think if I just add some darker shade into each fold here, that will be fine. I keep on refreshing the upcoming releases page on Word, hoping to see more, but well, I know that the reality is that we'll just have to wait a couple of months. It's a bit sad because some people start using proxies because they want to play new models, and that's understandable. But for one, I just only play with painted miniatures and only the miniatures which look immediately recognizable as the ones that they are meant to be. Now it's time for blood red, so slightly brighter shade of red. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to apply it over those surfaces that were not covered in the first go. Actually, I can just pretty much cover the whole surface. So what will happen is that the darker parts will continue to be darker, which is not a surprise really. And the brighter will just be brighter. So that's red, and it already looks pretty good. And it literally took me like 15 minutes to get to this point. Of course, there will be some cleanup that I will need to do on the fur because some of the red landed on it, but it's easier to clean it now than after painting the fur, because that would be like going over the same thing twice. Now, in order for it to dry steadily, I will just put the miniature on its back and move to the Winona miniature. This will be some nice, deep, saturated color. And I can just let a little bit more of the ink into the recessed area. If I missed any parts, I can just switch to smaller brush and reapply paint accordingly. Just like here, and maybe a bit more in the fold of the material. Oh, the tournament and the league. Well, not great. Let's start with the tournament. So in my first game, I played Titania 2 versus Yenta. And Titania 2 is just such a powerhouse. Her damage output is just surprised me how much damage she can put without the opponent being able to do anything about it, to strike back. Because she has this coordinated attack trigger, which means that you can get 6 decent hits if you have card, suits, or stones. And if you position things in the most optimal way, like having a Malisaurus or Hooded Rider, some other big beater engaged with the model that you're targeting, then it's a perfect setup. Now I'll paint the lips using pink, and that's a good starting point. And then you can discard the card to companion the knight, who is ideally 6 inches away, and the knight can hit the target twice. So even in such survivable crew as Yenda, you can do a lot of damage without really giving the opponent a chance to fight back, essentially. So I won my first game against Yenda in a quite decisive fashion, like 7-3, something like that. But I had a solid game plan, it worked, and also load them up was in the pool, and that's the strategy that Titania 2 likes the most. Because she just does it effortlessly. If the opponent doesn't have an attack, to remove the underbrush markers. And Yenta has a nice tag because both botanists can remove it and Yenta can remove the markers. But the thing is that they cannot really remove them if they are dead. So that was my plan, to kill Yenta fast, and I was successful in it. I had Assassinate, and I scored just 1 point because the thing about Assassinate is that it's hard to plan for 2 points, because if you have a chance to really get enemy master out of the game, you follow through. You don't wait for next turn and hope to win initiative and hope to kill that master in the next turn. If you can kill a master without their full activation, then you just go for it. So that's what I did. And my second game, since I got a very good result in my first game, then obviously I knew that in my second game I would be facing one of the top players. And that's a guy from, you might know him from Rage Quit Fire podcast. His name is Edek, or Edek as the host pronounces his name there. He's a very skilled player, plays mainly Bio, but now he's playing reserves. So he had Jack the second version. I had never faced titled Jack, so if I don't know what I'm facing, then I'm going for Titania 1 because that's the master I'm most familiar with. And it was a super killy scheme, very tight and competitive and very swingy game. And we ended up it ended up as a draw, like 4-4, I believe. But if I had activated differently in my final two activations, I would have won. Because I was sure that for hidden martyrs, it can be miniature of the same cost, but it needs to be miniature of the lower cost, engaging miniature of the higher cost. And Serena Bowman is 8 points, and so are the Hanged. So sadly, I just drew the game. And then in my third game, I played a guy whom I faced in my third game in previous tournament as well. And he just wiped the floor with with his von Schill, and he absolutely annihilated my Titania crew. So I thought I'll be smarter this time, even though the schemes and strategy don't make that much sense. I will go with Zoraida and use his pieces against him. But he predicted that and he went for Levy. And that was a really poor game for me. I lost like 7-3. So that didn't go too well. And in the league, but overall, very nice experience. Two games which were, I think, very good, and I felt very good about 90% of decisions I made. And clearly, there was a skill gap in my third game, but I'll be smarter next time. If I'm not feeling confident, then I should just go with what I feel good with. Now I'm thinking about the dress, but maybe I'll go with purple or teal. Well, I need to give it some thought. But first, I'll finish this guy. So while the pants are drying, I will go with some dark brown on the shoes. But overall, very nice tournament. It was held in Krakow, so it's also a nice, always nice opportunity to travel. And we had like 17, I believe, players, which was the biggest tournament in a while. So really, really nice presence of the community and great atmosphere. No problematic situations whatsoever, and just a good experience. And I'm not the most competitive player. Of course, everyone likes winning, but I recognize it when I am paired against a much skilled opponent and just try to get some points in. But my diff was 0, so that's actually not the worst result I had. Because I think I won 7-3, then I had a draw, and then I lost 7-3. So perfect 0 diff. And then I played a league game, and that was again Titania 1 with Load 'em Up, Titania 2 with Load 'em Up. So I won against Misaki. Thought I had the game in early on, but again, my opponent was quite skilled and managed to get 5 points out of it to my 8, when I thought that the game would end like 8-3. But that's the thing about skilled opponents. Yeah, 1-1-1. That's how I usually go at tournaments. That's been my ongoing result. I think past 3 tournaments that was 1-1-1 for me. So not too great, not too bad. The next tournament is early in March. I think the 2nd March weekend. And it's in my local area, so there won't be need to travel. And I'm definitely going to show up and maybe put some other masters on the table. I just, I would like to play other masters, but I just seems to me that Titania has answers to most of current gaming grounds. I would like to play Euripides more, but I just don't feel like he has answers to what I want to challenge on the table. And it just seems to me that if I put him on the table, it's much more work to achieve anything. And that's not how I feel about, say, Titania. And in the league so far, I have two major defeats and one, well, one maybe more of a major victory. And I'm playing my final game of this edition of our local league on Thursday this week. And it will be, I already know that my opponent will bring Maxine 1, and I will bring Titania 1. And it's a super killy scheme. So I brought all the big boys that Titania likes to run. So the Emissary, Malisaurus, and Hinamatsu. And it's going to be a super killy game with covert operation, assassinate, in your face, vendetta, hidden martyrs in the pool. Sounds like perfect recipe for your casual Thursday bloodbath. And the guy who runs our league is super creative when it comes to designing maps. So he gives us a map about a week ahead, and the maps are, well, challenging and intriguing at the same time. A little bit of both. Just making sure I don't miss any spots here. But yeah, I think generally local leagues are great initiative because that's if I know whom I'm facing and we set up a game ahead of time, then I don't need to bring a whole bag of miniatures. I can bring just what I want. Nothing more, nothing less. Yeah, it is fun. I mean, like, I just enjoy playing the game. Super nice, well designed game. And you know that I'm a fanboy, so I always speak highly of Malibu, but it's just good gaming, good meta, good times. And now I think I will just tweak the red very slightly using brighter shade and maybe land a few light highlights, maybe going into the range of orange on the umbrella. So just lightly going along the folds of the material. It's a subtle change, but impactful enough to really catch some attention. And as you can see, one of the techniques that I've developed is that I start moving the brush before I even touch the surface. It kind of gives me better control of the process, and I know that the paint will flow where I want, and I will have just more control of the brush strokes rather than touching and then moving the brush. Because that way I just feel like it gives me a bit more control. It's not necessary, but maybe it's a habit. It works for me. If it works for you as well, great. Just, sharing all the tips and tricks that I've learned over past several years of painting miniatures. Mostly word. Oh, you're moving to Georgia. Isn't it the state where Word headquarters are located? I think so. But it just takes If you want to have a thriving community, well, the sad fact or just the practicality is that unless you have one person who is more committed than others, like the leader, then you're going to struggle. You just need one person to be really driving the whole thing. One person who can put an event on Facebook, mobilize people, and just be there earlier, be prepared to be the ringer and not play in the tournament, and allow the community to grow and kind of sacrifice a bit. Oh yeah, that's fun. So moving closer to the word, that seems like a good idea. So I'm just slightly highlighting the decorations, the ornaments on the umbrella. Okay, now I'll just add Marietta. I think Marietta is the area where word is. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's where the guys are. Not like it's a secret, really, because it's all on the contact details are on their page. Cool. I'm just loading the brush so that it stays damp. I'm just going to focus on the most raised areas, throwing some orange in. Maybe I will just add a little touch of yellow as well. So not quite what the artwork says, not quite following the artwork, but just going with the flow. Cool. So we see opportunities for joining a league even if it's not in your local area. And we need defective dice to write one story for the new word book. Just saying, he has enough knowledge and ideas and theories to actually write a proper story or just introduce one of the characters. That would be amazing. Just showing a valuable community member proper recognition. Just an idea. It would be amazing to see Word repeat something that they did with characters like Marlena and Serena and the werewolf lawyer guy from Arcanist, where they had this campaign. Hobgoblin as a guest. That would be a good idea. Oh, come on. It can be a character introduction. Doesn't have to be a fully fledged, fully fleshed out story. Just introducing one character. Ferdinand Fogel. Oh yeah, Divergent Paths. That was an event, a campaign, I believe, or an event where people kept track of the games and the results affected the fate of some of the characters that were introduced. And Ferdinand Vogel was one of those. And Serena Bowman also made it. And it was funny because they evolved as the event continued. And Serena had really absolutely lousy luck and essentially got mutilated, sewn together, and then joined the Neverborn. Long story short, I was kind of hoping for Marlena to join the Neverborn because I wanted an angry girl riding a teddy. Seemed like a great fit, but well, she's part of Outcasts now. Can't have everything. So it doesn't look like much, but it's making this umbrella look much more three-dimensional now. Just making sure that I add yellow mixed with red on just the most raised areas or just the edges of them. Whoops. Got a bit too much. We'll just spread it around and that's fixed. I think a bit more of blue on the pants. Where's my blue? There it is. So I don't want to look like denim, but more like material blue, like some kind of fabric blue. So this looks solid, and one more layer of that will probably all I need. Maybe a bit more darker blue. And again, I affected the fur, not what I wanted. That can be fixed. All right. And by working from brighter shades to gradual darker, what I really like about this process is that, as you can see, the folds of the material, they remain much, much brighter, and this creates this nice transition from the much darker section to the brighter section. Now, there are still a couple more fine details because he's holding a golden watch on a golden chain, but the metallics will be, I'll wait with hold off with painting them until the final stage, but for now I can just make sure that all the gold rings on his fingers are accounted for. I can count at least 4, yeah, on each finger. Clearly, he is the kind of guy who wants to really show off. And then there is the golden watch and chain. Just being very careful because I already spent so much time highlighting the skin that I want to get it done properly in one go. There's the ring here also visible. Just being quiet and focused because I don't want to get this dark brown on other elements unnecessarily. There's the chain. Pretty quick to learn. Sometimes really nice puzzle things. Yeah, it doesn't seem super complex puzzle, but I just want to hold miniatures in hand when I play. Yeah, but the puzzle, that being said, puzzle is a great point of reference, especially when you just don't get to play. And I often end up watching some games as I paint. Like there is a guy called Joker Boy, and now he plays Neverborn. He's one of the top players in the world, I believe. And thanks to his YouTube channel, I was able to watch 2 games of Castor, the second version, which already gave me a lot of insights into how this master can play. It gave me some of ideas of some trick plays with him. So when I have him on the table, I will have more than a vague idea of what I can do. So yeah, I'm a big fan of watching recorded Vassal games. Never played it, and I can see the merits, but it's just not my thing. That's one of the reasons I spent all this time painting miniatures. I want to see them on the table. But yeah, playing more Vassal games would definitely allow me to grow more as a player. So maybe I'll get some highlights in. Why not? And then work with some glazes. I just want to make sure that I fix any areas that might be affected by other paints. It looks like a dwarf from Lord of the Rings. Quite different to the box sword, but maybe I will also do a thin down gray on his bald head to indicate some hair growing there. I'll see. But for now, I'll just start on the fur. So quick highlight, an overbrush. Now it's beginning to look more like a proper fur. Then I'll just add some brighter shade of white. Brighter shade of white sounds it doesn't sound very logical, but what I'm doing is I'm just dipping my brush, which had this bone white on it, and directly mixing it on the bristles of the brush with brighter shade. It's more of an, it's not pure white, it's more of an off-white mixed with this bone white color. It just will make for this smoother transition. And then I will apply a few glazes just to kind of bring it all together. And even when overbrushing, I'm just trying to be selective, more careful and more selective with each go. And that really brings out the full furry look. Pure white now. I think that also talking again about Vassal, one of the things that you need to learn to navigate it comfortably is all the shortcuts. That's what I hear from the guys who play it regularly, that once you become proficient with using shortcuts, then you just don't spend much time. And it's great for measuring the distance, because let's face it, measuring the distance in a real game is bound to be imperfect, because 5 inches of movement doesn't equal 5 inches of movement each time, even when you do it on the same model and you do your utmost best to be as careful about it and as diligent as possible. Just not going to happen, not going to be perfect. So now what I like is the colors are crisp and clear. What I don't like that is that this fur cloak look like it's been glued onto a miniature, that where we have some depth and gradual highlights, we just have this brutal dry brush. So now we'll be working on fixing that. And for that purpose, I will switch to soft tone, and I will just prepare a small mixing pot. And I typically use bases for that. So that's what I'm going to use this time as well. So give it a good shake. Oh yes, you can undo a move, and when I play a real game, and if I have some strategic decision to make, I do a proxy move. So I just take a 30 millimeter marker, let's say, and just move that marker without moving my miniature, and do the measurement, so that if I don't decide to take all those steps, my miniature stays in the same place where it was at the beginning of the turn. And that's one way of working around that when you play in a real game. Maybe not perfect, but pretty solid solution. So now I'm just kind of saturating it with a quick glaze of thin down brown, and it's already nicely setting in on the whole surface. And that guy will almost be ready very soon. I'll just leave the metallic parts for the end, because I tend to leave them for the end, because there are some specks of metallic paint can in a way contaminate your water and get carried over onto other colors that you use. But Fossil's games are absolutely great to watch. Really enjoy that, especially that if you play in a local meta that doesn't have that many players, you're bound to face some similar masters over and over. And on Vassal, you just get to see masters that you haven't faced and that you may likely never face in your local meta. Okay, I'll just let him dry. Just remove the excess, and I will further deepen the shadows with darker brown, but that will come a bit later. For now, let's move back to Winona, or maybe just remove the excess paint here and here, just to kind of spread it around better. Or like that. Now there's plenty work to be done on the lady, and I still haven't made up my mind on how I actually want to paint her. And I think that part of her dress will be dark and part very bright. Still can't make up my mind which will be which. I'll start with the bright part. And I'll start with Automatic Blue. And we have plenty of time to go, so not gonna hurry. I'll be at the same time making sure that this guy dries evenly. And as you can see, what I do is just try to keep that brush not too moist and remove the excess paint by just tapping it here. Maybe while I'm still at it, why don't I highlight the beard? Because it's a significant part of the miniature again. Well, thank you. Glad you like him. I'm definitely enjoying myself, having a blast. Just thin it down a little bit. And dry brush, don't recommend it because you just lose the depth. I don't recommend it for this type of work where you want to put some fine highlights on elements like beard here. Thin, directed brush strokes are just way more efficient in adding this impression of depth and real hair texture. Hope you guys can see it pretty clearly. If I block the view, try to monitor it, but if I hold it at the wrong angle, just shout at me in the chat box and I'll adjust accordingly. Yeah, that's more like a beard, like a proper beard. Pure white now. Just on the tips of the mustache. Should have prepared a hair dryer that would speed it up. Well, that's not a biggie. And I'll do the same thing on the fur, that I will just use thin brush and repeat those highlights gradually, one by one. For now, I will also work on some of the edge highlighting. So really, really thin line here. Maybe very thin line here as well. Just to add this extra impression of depth. Painting alongside the edges of the belts. And there is a thing to be said about belts in the world of Malifaux. They seem to be a very, very common addition. Then belt can be a good tool, right? It doesn't have to necessarily be only there as a belt. It can be used as a survival tool. So maybe that's the reason why they are so common. Adding some texture. And maybe I will add a bit more depth with darker glaze now. Mid brown. Just need to wait for it to dry better. Or maybe not necessarily. I'll just apply it. And use it on those more recessed areas. And help create this more gradual transition. I think transition and gradual got to be the most frequently used words for me in those streams, but that's just my painting style. Trying to have to build those volumes gradually, not making high contrasts. So now I'm just trying to apply it to the more recessed areas, not going all over the whole miniature. Some of them flowed over towards the beard. That's why I have the brush ready to remove the excess and proceed on to other elements. Now really focusing on those deeper recessed areas. That's the way to go. Keeping it darker where I want it to remain darker. Maybe using it without thinning it down would be more efficient. And then there will be no more tongue twisting. No more dry brushing, more of just pure brushwork on highlights. Now I guess I'll let it dry better. And we are slowly but steadily approaching the second hour of the stream, and while Mr. Ulrich Volkov is, I would say, 80% complete at this point, this lady is not. Nowhere near that. So my thinking is that I will go with bright blue for the most part. And the part that's not bright blue will be maybe greenish, maybe turquoise. Something that just goes well with the overall aesthetics of Explorer Society. Just looking at the faction logo already gives me some ideas. And now I'm just brushing over the parts which I covered with skin tone or red where I didn't want it to remain. Just a bit of a cleanup before I proceed. Time to start with maybe, no, maybe I'll do one more thing. I'll just reinforce slightly the highlights on the dress by applying a thin down of white, and that will help when I start applying contrast paint. So this part, just looking at the artwork to decide how to proceed. Now I can apply the thematic blue using a medium-sized brush. That will do. Now I'll apply it directly. I really like this color because it can be further modified and tweaked easily. So it's a good starting point. Just want to make sure that it doesn't pull too much in the recessed areas. And at this point, yes, I'm applying it in excessive quality, but I am quickly moving and adjusting to make sure that I don't have too much pulling in one place or another. So just spreading it out evenly. And I think I might actually do the upper section in the same color because then it's so bright and I can easily further tweak it with darker shade if I want to modify it. But that will already give me a good indication of where I am and what I want to do, what I can do. Flows nicely into the recessed areas, teens areas, and it's just a pleasure to work with this color. And it's actually winter holidays now in Poland, at least in my region of the country. So that means that my older daughter stays at home, although there are some nice activities organized by my town for kids who do not travel on holidays. But I will be taking my next week off and just visit the family, continue to get my daughter more opportunities to practice skiing, hope that there is some snow in the mountains in Poland and just enjoy time offline. Because we all need to go offline every now and then. Although I will be checking out Word and Waldo's Weekly on Wednesday and so on and so forth. Yeah, so you see it already doesn't look good, but looks decent, right? It doesn't look bad. And that's just the starting point for the dress, because I think I might go with with highlights the pure white actually, now that I look at it. And then I can use some weathering on the bottom section. But it's already nice, well-defined skin, dark hair, red saturated umbrella, so that's like the upper part of the miniature is pretty much complete. And now it's just a matter of fine-tuning the bottom. And let's check back on our guy. How is he doing? Is he drying steadily while the lady continues to dry? I'll just spread it a bit more over the recessed area. Same here and here and here and here. And at this point, I think I can start applying those highlights that I mentioned. So I'll just be using my fine brush. And rather than dry brushing, I'll be using brush strokes here, just to really pick on those details. That might be a bit time consuming, but that's fine. Not in a hurry. That's beginning to look how I want it to. And that's the advantage of working on two models or more simultaneously, or batch painting, is that you can just flip from one to another. When paint dries on one, you just continue working on the other one. It can be tedious, especially when you work on a large bulk of miniatures, but it's an effective technique for sure. Well, not a technique, but rather a setup. So what I'm doing now is I'm just trying to put some fine highlights on the texture of the fur and not paint across each strand of fur, rather than just highlight the midsection of each textured piece. And that way I further push this impression of this having more depth than just dry brushed element. I mean, nothing wrong with dry brushing. With pure dry brush, this part would look good enough, really. Wouldn't look bad. But I want it to look a bit better than that. And then I'll just use pure white and be even more selective with highlights. It's almost 2 hours upon us. Time flies by, and once you get really into this focus mode, you don't realize how fast the time flies. It's quite incredible. And again, trying to establish some kind of pattern of highlights here and focusing on the more central line for each fold of the material. I think I might still do some weathering here with dry pigments just to break down the semi-coherent pattern. And the thing about dry brush is that if I dry brushed here, then the whole thing would be immediately moved to the same range of white. And by using a thin brush and just very selectively highlighting some elements, I just make it look more more three-dimensional. It's again one of the phrases that I use like a broken record here, but it's all about the kind of attitude and mindset I have while working on the miniature. Yeah, so that looks pretty okay. I don't think there will be many changes here. Moving on. Maybe what I'll do is I will do a very light glaze of gray on top of his head, just to indicate that there is some hair, that he shaved his head, but he's not bald, just keeps his head shaved. So, hit the camera a little bit, but that's fine. So I want this very light indication that there is some hair. So what I'll do, I'll just do it in a few layers. That's layer 1, so barely any gray visible. More to follow. And the silver and golden elements will also bring this more to life. Because right now it looks like there is just a bit too much of red, and those buttons will be silver. The pistol grip will be silver. The belt buckle, I think, maybe silver red, and definitely gold chain here. So just a few elements. But I'm really enjoying painting this miniature. Super nice model. And surprisingly easy to put together. I would say that only this gold and this chain here was a bit problematic. But other than that, Nice and easy. Okay, the top of the hat is dried. So let me get some more purple. No, not purple, but more gray. I'll just have a quick glaze or two. And you need to be really patient. You don't want to go too heavy here. So I'll just wait for it to dry completely before I apply another glaze. And that just gives, I'm just looking at the artwork and it's clear that he shaved his head clean. And also, while I wait, I may actually do the eyebrows, the bushy eyebrows he has, because without them his face seems somewhat empty. And the eyebrows will be in darker shade than the beard. So I'm just using a gray wash. I may apply it in 2 layers just to strengthen the color. Just want to make sure it's darker, and then I can quickly highlight it just slightly. And one more layer on the hat because it seems like it's drying nicely. One more. Set the eyebrows now. Quick highlight there. Maybe a bit more of white, because why not? Just to make sure it looks like bright gray. There's the texture and the hair, individual hair visible. Okay, maybe I will just patch up one piece quickly with a little bit of skin shade. Just notice that some of the gray got on the forehead where I don't really want it to be, so just quickly go over this part. There, it's better now. And while I have this bright skin tone, I can touch up the nose, the upper lip, and the cheekbones. Maybe a quick touch on the forehead and the chin. And one more quick highlight. I mean, not highlight, but quick glaze. Now we're really getting to this darker shade. Which is fine. And now his face looks a bit more aged, but more dignified. What has been my favorite model to paint that they put out in the last year or so? Oof, that's a tough question. That is a tough question. I would need to really look back. Let me have a quick look at what I actually painted over past year. I think that the new Titania, definitely, the iconic Titania. I did enjoy, well, if I was to pick one, just one, that's a tough. Tara Timeless. Many people dislike this miniature, but I loved it. I loved Leviticus too. Hard to tell. Maybe I would say that maybe Titania, the fake wing, the armored version. That was probably if I was to narrow it down to just one, that this would be probably it. And while I have it, I will just also further push the shades between the fingers. Oh, that's a close match. I mean, I could name I quickly named a few, and it's really, really hard for me to pinpoint the one specific that was more enjoyable than others. Well, let's put it this way. There was not a single miniature for Malifaux that I painted over past year that I did not enjoy. This guy is almost ready, just the metallic elements that I need to work on. But he is a really, really lovely model. Might still tweak some of the recessed areas, just a little bit, just to give him a bit more depth. But those are really, really small changes that just further accentuate the recessed areas. So not a game changer, but just steadily boosting the recessed areas where I want them to look darker. Yeah, Terra has, I mean, it has people puzzled because you really struggle how to paint it. How the hell do I go about painting it, right? Because it's 3 miniatures running, and you really need to paint it sub-assembly mode because you can't really efficiently go with the whole thing. So that's a bit tricky. Maybe that's why some people dislike it, because it's most people, I think, that they want to assemble the whole thing. Cult guys were also quite cool because those were, I mean, okay, maybe not super unique because there is this ice golem that's kind of in the same aesthetics. Okay, time to put some more work on this lady. And I think that I will go with the teal shade now. And for the teal part, I will need to move to slightly darker color. Maybe I will go once more with a thematic blue, just for funsies. And I'm also not fully objective here because I'm a Neverborn player, and those are the miniatures that I see most frequently, and I most frequently work on even during my streams. Because our lovely hobby assistant is kind enough to send me, she keeps on sending me things from Word which are mainly Neverborn, and I'm just getting spoiled with Neverborn stuff. Not complaining. Keep them coming, especially Castor. I hope I will get to paint Castor for you guys on one of the streams at some point in the future. Nearer future than further future, I hope, but you never know. Let's hope I just hope he appears before Gen Con. That just further pushed this light bluish, slightly greenish look. And now let me get my turquoise wash. I think I have it somewhere under the desk. Let me just dive in for it. Yeah, there I have it. There it is. No, it's not the one. But okay, I got it. Different place, but still here. Close enough. Yeah, do that. Do that. I'm sure that Word Hobby Assistant is listening, so probably it's been noted. Well, we did get preview of Tull. The silent Tull, running with a pistol, not the artillerist. And you can check out Kim's own Instagram account. She's probably the first person in the world to be lucky to paint this guy. But I'm really, really looking forward to Castor. There's something about big, muscular demons that just makes it fun to work with. I read that some people have been using Euripides as Castor for just proxy in local games until the actual model is released. I think that the first version of Euripides is, well, close enough. Well, it just got logged. I need to do it. Reminds you of Hoffman. Which version did you play against? The artillery guy or the silent one? You love spoiling your stream, else. No promises, try to make. Yeah, you do. There has never been a package that I received that wouldn't make me happy. So I know that you do your best, but there's so much you can do. All right, you cannot control everything. Artillery tool. Okay, that's the. I had a look at the cards and seems like he could be trouble on the table. He could be trouble for sure. Just looking at the model and seeing how I can approach painting her. So that will be more towards the teal. Actually, I like how the turquoise works on the bright blue. So might as well keep the whole thing teal and only some parts black. because it really nicely accentuates the complex sculpture. Yeah, I like it. And if I applied this wash directly on white, it would just look messy. So it's all about setting the good foundation here. There's this Kool-Aid man who can go through the wall, and your crew can just then fire through the wall. That seems like it could be mean trick in game. And what were your impressions? Does he remind you of the bad type of Hoffman that was just untouchable and removing a model or two per turn? Because he has those nasty artillery markers, or however they are called. Can't recall the exact name right now. And not to mention, he's an awesome miniature. He has a cat, I believe, on his shoulder. And I like how he's presented in the story, especially in contrast with Hoffman, who's always so cool-headed. He's like this, essentially like this ruffian. And clearly, in Tool's view, the end justifies the means. Sergeant Walter. Yep. I think it's really scary individually, but the master glues them together, leaving manipulate artillery and the way they work, as well as provide pulses that heal and. Yes, there seem to be quite a few synergies there to be mindful of. Probably facing Tool, you just want to kill the master as fast as possible. Because typically, when there is a master that has such strong synergies with the crew, then things start to crumble when the master is removed from the game, which is not always the case, but can be the case quite often. Only he's probably way in the back, surrounded by qualified bodyguards. Okay, that's coming along nicely. It's just that the teal wash that I'm using now has completely different consistency than contrast paints. Just flows more freely and needs a bit more effort. But it's already a nice teal dress. Quite elegant. Have normally options taking something for accelerated in. Okay, let's let's get to be one of the few corner case scenarios where you use Silurids offensively. But I guess whatever works, they can definitely move up the board fast. And if they can challenge those key pieces, then and they can poison them, right? So they do not have much health. Those artillery pieces, that can be one way of neutralizing them. Blasting armored units with constant damage like Black Blood is probably the best option. Attrition. Okay, makes sense. I'll bear it in mind. There is actually one player in my local meta who 3D printed models that look close enough to what this keyword brings to the table, and he's been using him in a lot of games and doing very, very well. We have quite a few players who are vets from other gaming systems, and they just quickly identify the good stuff when they when they get into Malifa. Good to know. And thanks for sharing those thoughts. Because now there is a very good color that I could actually use from contrasts. Let me just find it. I think that's the one. Achelian green, which is this very, very dark. And yeah, 4 points isn't too bad. I scored 3 points in my last tournament game. Also, it doesn't matter how many points you score, as long as you score more than your opponent. There can be low scoring games every now and then in such games 4 points can be 3 points can give you a victory even in some situations. But then you don't have to be very good at this game to enjoy it. And I'm a good example. Far from a top-notch competitive player, but I do enjoy my fall every now and then. So now just going over those darker areas and using the card for reference, because in the card it's gray and black. So I'll replace it with teal and dark teal. That's the way to go. Might need a layer or two to really make it work, but still half an hour left in the stream, so plenty of time. There is the crochet and the back. And I haven't really used much this particular contrast color. Not too many opportunities really. And the gloves. I think that the gloves might end up full black, just to make sure that they stand out more. But for now I'm happy to keep on getting them darker gradually. Yeah, I think I need to make it darker. I need to wait for the paint to dry before I continue. But while I wait, I might as well put some highlights in. So I'll try to do it by mixing this one white with the previous teal highlight that I've used, and let's see how it goes. I'll just start from the back. It looks pretty good. Oh well, if you deny points, then you don't have to score many. But it's good to get at least a couple in. Makes things easier. But predominantly, you're really expected to just have fun. I mean, it's a game, right? It's a game. Of course, you can get competitive, but you have to remember it's always a game. And the thing that I'm most happy about in terms of my last rather mediocre tournament performance is that I completed all 15 turns. And we had a limit of, I think, 2.5 hours. And 2 of my games finished ahead of time, like way ahead of time. The game where I had a draw finished like 20 minutes ahead of time. And the game where I was wiped off the table finished after about 90 minutes maybe. I just quickly realized that I'm not really going to get much out of this game, so we just quickly played it through to the end. And those nice cuffs are going to take some time to highlight thoroughly, but I will use my last 30 minutes for that. For this dress only, I think. Which is fine. Not going anywhere. Yeah, it's 5 turns is you feel bad if you complete only 3 turns. Because 3 turns it means that you might be facing a new player who just doesn't know the rules and you don't want to be rude and keep on pushing them to speed up. And that can happen, right? Especially if it's against new players. And that's understandable. But then if you're both experienced or semi-experienced players, then fewer than 4 rounds is just not good. Not good because things don't pan out. But for this game is designed to play for at least 4. Well, ideally 5 rounds, but fewer than 4 is just not good for the gaming experience. But also it comes with familiarity with your keyword, and I'm quite familiar with the fake keyword, and by fake keyword I mean Titania and versatiles, because that's the fake keyword. That's how it operates. Although actually with Titania too, it's the fake keyword. It is undoubtedly the fake keyword then that you factor in. And this isn't the most complex screw. There aren't just that many options. It's mostly about positioning, maximizing damage output, and dropping some schemes with triggers. And that's it. That's all there is to it. Nothing to write home about. Now when it dries, because it's still this white tinted with teal, I'm going to use a quick dry brush to really address those edge highlights here and the most raised areas. So I should be able to finish most of what I set out to finish. So 2 hours of swinging your brush at a miniature can yield nice results. I think I can still add to the gray hair just a little bit. And I have this lovely color that I actually bought today, Abyssal Turquoise, and I think I can use it for some of the recessed areas. Why not? I'll just make sure to thin it down. And actually, I can use the palette. Yeah, flows nicely. Good choice. So those will be my first two Malifaux miniatures painted this month, and I'm part of this painters challenge on the forums, and I'm supposed to paint 20 Solstones monthly, so this won't be enough, and I'm taking the next week off, but then I'm streaming again in 2 weeks time, so I expect that I will be able to complete my painting pledge for the month without much of a problem. I just need to paint something on my next stream, and then I'm good to go. Hey, cheers. Thank you for sticking around for so long. And once again, thank you for your amazing ongoing work. The community appreciates you, even if we aren't the most responsive community in comments, likes, shares, subscribers, and so on and so forth. We do appreciate great content creators. So keep it up. Okay, I need to highlight it a little bit. So there we go. My trick of keeping track of which highlights I need to reapply is just having this empty base and use it properly. Maybe a bit more of that. Maybe a bit more of this Achillean green. This is such a nice and deep shade of something between blue and green. Really works well here. The gloves will be black. I just want them a bit darker. Why don't I do it now, in fact? Maybe a touch of green, but mostly black. I can still do an overbrush to bring out some of the detail. She's looking like a proper elegant lady. And Winston Finnegan, I can't remember all of his story, but he had some of the most bizarre background story. One of the most bizarre background stories I've read. It's like the actual man disappeared, but then a much younger man called Winston Finnegan came back, apparently by making some kind of deal with a tyrant called Fortune. So there is a lot to Winston, and he's bound to make an impact, because any characters that interact more closely with any of the tyrants are in for some kind of adventure, sometimes with not the most fortunate outcome, but clearly impactful. I think I will need to redo the eyes on this one because I'm not fully happy, because once I glazed over that with light brown, it kind of disappeared, so I will need to redo the eyes here. May do it during the stream, may do it offline, depending on how far I get. Still a bit more of a Callian green. Maybe a light touch of black to that to keep it a bit darker. And just go to the more recessed areas. Also, this upper part here looks interesting. I think I might also do darker here, just as in the artwork. So working from brighter to darker shade makes it easy for applying such adjustments on the fly. You can just keep on adding washes and glazes of darker shade until you're fully satisfied with the outcome. A bit too many objects in the background and the camera is losing focus. Let me just fix it. I can actually, what I can do is I can turn this page upside down and there is more clarity now. See, so the color that I ended up using on the dress is not something I had in mind from the get-go. It was more of a just on the fly thing. I'm pretty happy with the outcome. Okay. Let's look at our guy. Yeah, he does. Now that someone mentioned earlier in the chat that he looks like Santa Claus, I can't get that image out of my head. And it is indeed some kind of Santa. Okay, I think I can do the metallics now, as we are getting into the final 20 minutes of the stream. Why not sort the metallics now? No time like present. So I'll start with silver. And paint the buttons. And that will make the front of the miniature more interesting immediately. Once the silver dries, I will give it a quick glaze of gray and then bring back the silver using only smaller surface so that there is transition. And the same on belt buckle. Seriously, who wears a belt on their chest? Only if you have very peculiar type of physique, I guess. That's the silver, maybe a little bit more on this button. This button needs some more and some more here. And I could use some gold here, because why not? Let's put some glorious gold. While I'm working with gold, I might as well already tackle the the watch that he's holding. And I want to make sure that part of the darker frame around this remains so that it's clearly visible. And I'm happy just covering the whole surface. Because that will be further darkened with a glaze of brown. Could be. Could be part of the holster, right? Yeah, makes sense then. Yeah, that makes sense. Haven't thought about it. And this part of the umbrella, it's going to get some silver. I know it looks super bright and not so nice now, but it will get black glaze and it will bring it down and will make it work well with the rest. And also she has this necklace. So the necklace will be bright silver, I reckon. So quite a few tiny bits. Might not deal with all of them. Need to fix this one. And a bit of touch up here. It's all good. Maybe grab a smaller brush. And is anyone wondering, is anyone else painting along? And if yes, then what are you working on? And why Malifa? Okay, that's the part which will be hard to get to because it's tough. Try to get there. Yeah, got there. Not that you can see it, but trust me, guys, I managed to cover it without painting over the umbrella. So I'll still do a bit of an overbrush here. Make sure that there isn't much paint on the brush. And just do an overbrush to really pick those edge details. The hair as well. Really makes them pop when you do it like that. You just need to identify the edge areas that you want to target. And this lady is almost done. Just a bit over 10 minutes left. So The temptation is now to really speed up and ensure I paint everything, but I'm going to force myself not to do that because I don't want the quality to suffer. I think that overall the composition of teal and red has worked quite well. Quite happy with the outcome. Now I'm looking if I want to further boost any elements here. Maybe a little bit. Still hesitant whether I should add some weathering. I think I might do without weathering for once. Don't really see the point because that makes him look more grand. Makes him look more sophisticated. If he's clean and presentable. Oh yeah, that's my Instagram. Thank you for sharing. And I believe tomorrow it's Doug's turn again. Yes, Doug Bowman. So Guslade with another stream coming to you guys tomorrow, same time. So make sure you check it out. And also speaking of Doug, sorry for bringing it up without sharing it with you earlier, Kim, but wanted to really make sure that it's brought to your attention. There's this new podcast called Students of Conflict. Oh, haunted. Oh, no. Sorry to hear that. But Students of Conflict, guys, if you have a chance to check it out, I encourage you to do so because I like the idea behind this podcast is that there's one player who is a bottom three and other players who are top three. And they discuss their most impactful games from a tournament. So it's divided into sections. So each episode is like 30, 40 minutes. And yeah, that's the one. Thank you for the link. And this is good for both the advanced players who are well established and those who are just looking to find their way and survive against other more experienced opponents. And you get a lot of valuable insights. So, for example, I listened to one episode in which they talked about one of the new masters. Well, they talked about Damien, of course, Damien Ravencroft, Damien Unbound to be more specific, and a lot of sound advice. So, if I ever face Damien on the table, I haven't had the pleasure yet. But if I face him, I will be, well, I won't be hopeless. I will be somewhat prepared. And very nice format. I encourage you guys to check it out, give it a listen, and subscribe, of course. Solid material. I actually listened to it today when I was commuting to work, and that was time well spent. I need to give it one more highlight. So some silver here on the upper section, here, and here, and here, and here as well. That's it for the silver part. Now for the golden, I will mix it with silver to have this bright, shiny gold. And just work with it on the timepiece. And speaking of timepiece, Harrison Frodsham, or however you pronounce it, I might as well start an open petition to nerf this guy because he is a problem. There is so much on this guy's card that you could divide it on between two models and still call them extremely powerful. Well, time will tell. Maybe it's just that no one is prepared for him yet. And people just need to find a way of dealing with him efficiently. That should come with more exposure. Okay. Time to wrap things up. Thinking about my next stream. Could be Nekima too. Could be Noxious Nephilim. I'll see. But for today's stream, it's been my pleasure to paint alongside you guys watching the stream. And I painted Mr. Ulrich Volkov, so alternative guild steward. Lovely miniature with very distinct features. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. So that's Mr. Ulrich. Still needs varnish and a proper black on the rim of the base, but almost good to go. 90%, 95% done. Just pure pleasure really working with this model. It feels like it painted itself. So I really enjoyed the whole process, and I hope I was able to share and show well how I approach painting red, because the final effect of red is pretty good, but it wasn't really that much of an effort. So hope it makes it easier for you guys. And then we have Miss Winona Finnegan, whom I didn't have a clear idea of how to approach, but ended up using teal and dark teal and red, some black. So a nice pair they would make if they went to a cocktail party together. So that's it for tonight. Thank you so much, guys. See you in 2 weeks' time. And until then, stay weird, stay happy, keep on happy painting. Take care, everyone. Have a great rest of the day and a good night. Bye.